We're going to get started today here in a lunge position. One knee can be down if you want, pelvis in a neutral position, torso right up. We're just leaning forward here. If you want a little bit of an extra stretch, go ahead, twist towards that upper knee. That'll stretch the hip flexors a little bit more here, especially that iliopsoas muscle that goes up here. It's part of a rotation muscle, so we can get a little bit more of a stretch here, and it's a muscle that's kind of hard to get to on its own. From there, we can go ahead and switch legs. Once again, a little bit more of a stretch if you want it. Go ahead, twist into that upper knee. Otherwise, we want to make sure we're keeping that pelvis at neutral, torso upright. All right, we're going to come back to that stretch here in a moment. What we're going to do first, after we've kind of slightly warmed that up, is this hip flexor circuit that we've been doing before. So again, we're going to start in this normal lunge position, go into a Spider-Man stretch, which is a little bit of a different hip flexor stretch, and then we're going to bring it back to a hamstring. We're going to repeat that twice, both sides, and we're going to go back into that little bit more of a longer hip flexor stretch. So now that we're in this hip flexor stretch, join me down here in a Spider-Man. Torso comes forward, pelvis drives down into the floor, hands supporting ourselves up here. We're going to bring ourselves up. Pelvis comes back on that back leg. Front leg extends, hamstring stretch here. We're going to come back up into that normal hip flexor stretch. We're going to repeat that 2 more times still, a little bit quicker. So you can afford to be a little bit more aggressive in these stretches. And now let's rotate into that Spider-Man stretch here. Once again, pelvis drives down to the floor. Drop it back to a hamstring stretch. And one more time through on this side. Again, we can be a little bit more aggressive, trying to get a bit more of an activation of the muscles, warm them up a little bit before we go back into those stretches. We wanted to do that hip flexor stretch first, just so we could get it a little bit more warmed up before we do the rest of these. Here, we'll drop it back, hamstring stretch. Raise ourselves up. We'll stay on this side. We're going to go right into that more long pass or hip flexor stretch here, where we're back in this neutral pelvis position, torso upright, pelvis driving forward. You can rotate if you want a little bit more of a stretch. We're going to hold this one a little bit more longer now that we're warmed up. Don't feel that you need to be as aggressive as we just were within that circuit. Go ahead, you can switch right there. We're going to do the same thing. 3 circuits, normal hip flexor, Spider-Man, hamstring. We're going to do that 3 times. Then go into that elongated hip flexor stretch once the muscles got a little bit more warmed up. So in this normal hip flexor stretch, we can drop it down then into a Spider-Man. Once again, pelvis down to the floor, hands supporting our torso upright. Once again, you can be a little bit more aggressive in these shorter stretch bursts here as we go through the circuit, trying to warm up the muscles actively. And drop it back, pelvis onto that back leg, front leg extends, hamstring stretch. Back up, normal hip flexor position. We're going to go through that 2 more times still here again. And drop it down, pelvis to the floor. And hamstring stretch. And we're going to go through that one more time here. Again, you can afford to be a little aggressive with that lean forward. Chop it down, Spider-Man stretch. And hamstring. Bring it up for me again. Here we're going to be in that elongated hip flexor stretch now that we've rewarmed the body here. If you want a little bit more, go ahead. You can rotate in. Otherwise, just a normal hip flexor stretch is fine. All right. Now we're going to go into a little bit of a longer hamstring stretch here. You can go ahead, one leg extended here, other leg brought in. Go ahead, reach forward. This will be a little bit longer. Don't want to get as aggressive here. Really just let the hands fall down. Torso provides the resistance or the pressure for the stretch. You do not have to grab onto the toes or your ankles to try to pull yourself down. Really just let yourself fall in. We will be in this position for a while here. So do try to get more comfortable. As you're breathing here, deeper breaths, trying to hold in for a little few seconds. As we're doing that, once you get a few breaths in, 4 or so, you can go ahead, try to get yourself a little bit deeper, try to relax more into that stretch as we continue going. We can switch there. Other leg extends, falling forward. Once again, after a few deep breaths, go ahead. You can try to lower yourselves a little bit more if you feel comfortable enough to do so. Come ahead, come on back. What we have next here, V stretch. We're going to stretch down into the middle. If you need a little bit of an extra support, you can lean against the wall if it's hard for you to get into this front forward leaning position. Once again, we're going to be here for a little bit. Hands just falling forwards. As we get a little bit more comfortable, those hands can climb out a little bit after a few nice deep breaths there. Go ahead, raise yourselves up slowly. You guys can join me on your back here. We're going to have a glute stretch here next. What we're going to have here is one leg comes up, goes on top of that other knee with that ankle. Go ahead, wrap your hands around that bottom knee and just around the back here. Pull yourselves in. This is a great stretch to do. If we've been sitting for a while, just like our hip flexors can get tight, our glutes can also get a little deactivated, get a little tight from sitting around for most of the day. So go ahead and pull that in. Go ahead and lower that for me. First leg comes down, other leg comes up. Similar position, ankle to knee. Wrapping your hands behind that down or bottom knee and pulling that in. From there, you can lower it back down and off with my favorite stretch, the forward neck stretch. Feel free to get in whatever position you feel comfortable, but we're going to start off dipping that chin towards the chest here, stretching the back of the neck. I know I've said before, this is my favorite stretch just because it gets the blood flow going back into the brain, helps it out quite a bit, helps our brain get that oxygen that it needs. From there, we can bring it up, chin, head tilts back, stretching those small but tight muscles there in the front, being a little bit more gentle here, but it is important to give those muscles the attention that they need. And bring that back to center. One ear to the same side shoulder, stretching the side of the neck here. Really letting those shoulders relax in this position, really focusing the tension on those neck muscles. Go ahead, raise it up, switch it over, ear to shoulder. As we're finishing it up here today, remember, stay hydrated. It's going to be really important to keep those muscles hydrated, moving, active. Go ahead, take some walk breaks, some stretch breaks as well throughout the day.